Good evening. I'm going to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Lake Forest Planning Commission. Surprisingly, we are all present. Good news. And we will have the Pledge of Allegiance, actually led by myself. Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, so this brings us to the public comments section of the meeting. We do have quite a few people out there. I don't know if you're all here for the same agenda item, but are there any requests to speak on an item that is not on this evening's agenda? Okay. All right, we will move on then. So we'll go to the first presentation item. Is it out of order? Huh?
No, that would be the consent calendar. We have no presentation items this evening.
Okay. I don't think I have the right agenda in front of me. Thank you.
So item 1 on the consent calendar is approval of minutes from the Planning Commission meeting of February 26, 2015.
Thank you.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All right, let's vote. And the item carries unanimously. All right, this moves us into our public hearing.
We have one public hearing item this evening. It's Site Development Permit 1214-4679, a dance training facility within an existing building. And Jennifer Mansour has a staff report this evening.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. This item is a site development permit for Extreme Dance, a dance training facility proposed to be located in an existing building in the Rancho Business Center, located on the corner of Bake Parkway and Rancho Parkway South. Extreme Dance currently operates out of the Foothill Business Park, which is also located on Rancho Parkway South. The business provides dance training for various dance styles for both recreational students and members of the facility's 16 competitive dance teams. The proposed schedule for the dance facility is Monday through Friday, 3:45 p.m. to 8:30, and on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Members of the competitive dance teams typically have multiple dance training sessions and trained 2 to 4 hours a day, 2 to 5 days a week. The dance teams compete against other dance teams in competitions and tournaments. The business is proposing to move into the Rancho Business Center, which includes 14 industrial office buildings, which have been subdivided into separate condominium units with individual owners. The Rancho Business Centers Association, Owners Association owns the common areas of the business park and enforces the park's CC&Rs. The Planning Commission's decision on this project would not supersede any regulations in the association's CC&Rs. The Rancho Business Center is zoned urban activity, and the dance facility use is considered an indoor athletic facility by the city's code. Indoor athletic facilities in this zoning district require approval of a site development permit. The city's code does not have a parking standard for indoor athletic facilities. Therefore, the applicant submitted a parking study prepared by a licensed engineer. The parking study included a survey of the existing facility in Foothill Business Park and concluded that the 27 parking stalls allotted to the tenant space would accommodate the proposed use. Conditions of approval have been included with this project, restricting the occupancy of the dance facility to 57 students, instructors, and/or employees at any given time, and requiring 15 minutes between the end and start time of any 2 consecutive classes. In addition, a condition of approval has been added that includes that if at any time the on-site parking does not accommodate the project's parking demand, the applicant shall initiate measures such as adjusting the schedule to rectify the parking shortage. Staff evaluated many factors pertaining to the land use compatibility of a dance training facility within a business park setting. The proposed dance training facility has functioned for 8 years within a similar business park setting with no complaints to the city or any city violations. The dance facility will be conducted completely within the interior of the building, and the roll-up doors will remain closed during dance classes to minimize any noise impacts. Furthermore, the peak hours of the business are around 6 o'clock p.m., when most of the businesses in the park are closed. Accordingly, the proposed dance facility is in compliance with the city zoning code requirements and, as conditioned, will be compatible with the surrounding uses. Staff has received 5 letters of opposition to the project from different owners in the business park. Copies of these letters are on the dais, and I've also provided a map so that you'd have a bigger map of the business park, and the ones with yellow dots show the owners that provided the letters. Staff is recommending the Planning Commission approve the site development permit and adopt the corresponding resolution. The applicant for this project is in the audience tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Are there any questions for staff? Okay. All right. I guess we'll go to the comments.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes. My name is Heather Van Hulley, and I am the owner of Extreme Dance. I have been teaching in the area for a little over 20 years. I've had extreme all-star training programs for about 15 years, and we've had Lake Forest as our home for almost 9 years in June. We have over 250 championship titles, and we have actually represented Lake Forest 4 times now in Worlds competition, and we are rated top 10 in the world. In about another 6 weeks, we'll be heading back to Epcot Center, Walt Disney World, to again represent the U.S. and Lake Forest to compete again against teams all over the world, Japan, the Netherlands, England, everywhere, you name it. We are definitely a more serious dance training program. Although we do have some recreational students, our focus is kids that are coming in for teams. Therefore, as mentioned, they come for long periods of time. We don't have kids coming in and out constantly or a lot of, every hour back-to-back classes. It doesn't work that way. If you see in our schedule that we have, and we have the current schedule that is on there that shows that the kids come for 4 to 5 hours at a time. Even our 5-year-olds, the least amount of time that they're there is about 2 hours. So typically the driving and parking traffic kind of situation is not as congested as it may seem for a normal, regular dance studio. Typical dance studios do have classes back-to-back. Often they have them all day long, and they have a lot of students that come for just 1 hour. And most of our clientele, probably 75% of our clientele, does that. They come and stay for long periods of time. We have, about a year and a half ago, we were told that our building was going to be sold. And this is why, one of the many reasons, of course, very important, that we are looking for a new home for our program. And getting to be able to stay in the same area, obviously, is ideal. It is 1 driveway away from where we are right now. Most of our clientele is from the Lake Forest and Foothill Ranch area. And again, we've had our programs for almost 15 years, so we certainly would love to stay in the Lake Forest area. Just to address some of the opposition, those letters, we have a few different solutions, we believe, that would help alleviate some of those concerns. One, it's very common, and in the city of Lake Forest, there are a lot of recreational facilities, as I'm sure you know, that are in industrial parks that have children. And as where we are at right now is also, we have industrial, it's light industrial there, and there are a lot of trucks that go in and out. We've never had a problem there. We have not, well, first of all, we don't have any children that are ever allowed to be outside. They wait inside for their parents. The parents come in to pick them up. That has never been allowed. There's no kids loitering. There's certainly not any children playing outside. It is more of a serious facility. So the parents come in to pick them up. We've had no problems there. There is rock climbing, Vista Terrace, indoor volleyball on Fuerte Drive, ice skating rink on Hermana, baseball academy on James Bay Circle, MVP Sports on James Bay Circle, gymnastics on Prism, basketball, volleyball on Atlantic Ocean, CrossFit on Dimension, and obviously we've been in our location for several years. We've never had any issues, and it is common with these types of uses that you need a much larger facility than what any sort of retail facility would be able to offer for us. To address some of the issues on the letter, or letters, I should say. One, we would be wanting to put all of our parking information on all of our registration materials. I'd like to make sure that none of our clients park in any other, of the business's parking area. We would add our parking information, guides, and highlighted areas to our website. We would also add a student policy that parents would sign for students to always remain inside the studio in the front waiting area, and that waiting outside is strictly prohibited. I would also add signage to the inside lobby waiting area and on the inside of the front doors that say all students must wait inside for pickup, as well as our classes being tiered to 15-minute intervals. As of right now, as you see in our parking study, it showed that we actually had a surplus of parking, and typically we don't see any more than about 9, I think was the highest number of cars that are ever parked there. We have also offered to tier our classes in 15-minute intervals, which we don't have that right now. Typically right now they run all back-to-back, and we still haven't had any sort of traffic or congestion issues or parking issues. However, we are more than willing to do that in this new space just to make it a little bit simpler for parents coming in and out when we do have those pick-up and drop-off times. We also have not had any complaints from any of the other tenants or businesses in our current space. And I do have a letter here from our property manager stating that as well, that we have not received a complaint for them about noise, parking, or any other reason from any of our tenants or from any of the neighboring properties. I do have that. We are certainly willing to work with, anybody who is in our area. We want our neighbors to feel that, we are contributing in a good way, and that we are not planning on having any sort of facility that has destruction or kids all over the place. This is a very serious business. We certainly run on professionalism, and we like to teach our kids that too. So I'm happy to, actually, I'm sorry, I do have one more thing. I have two things. The parking that is there right now, the current tenant is Service Master. His name is Michael Demeter, who owns the building, and he has sent me information that says that right now, currently, they use 22 to 25 spots during normal business hours of parking. They have about 10 trucks and service vehicles that are there throughout the day, and at least 12 private cars that are there throughout the day. If you were to look at the two locations, which I actually do have photos here, if that would be okay to show you, I have photos of 28 Rancho Circle at several times of the day, and of our location at several times of the day. If you aren't familiar with those exact locations, I actually believe that if you were to look at this and really review the parking study, that you would see that it actually seems as though we may help alleviate some of the parking issues that they do have, because our business doesn't run until after 3:45 p.m. Between the hours of 9 and 3:45, or about 3:30, I would say, we have at most one car there currently. And even if we were to have a class in the morning or something, we would still fall well below the actual parking counts, even if we were at 3 cars, or our Saturday morning class of younger recreational students, we have about 6 cars there on Saturday. So we have actually a lot less parking that we are using throughout the day. We do not have any trucks. We don't have a lot of congestion going in and out. And again, we haven't had any issues with any of the trucks in our neighboring area either. Can I give these to you, or? Okay. I also have in there, which I believe is in the study in that binder, is the all of the local hours of operations of the businesses nearby. Those have the times of day and which location you're looking at.
Okay. Well, for now, I'll say thank you, and we may end up calling you back up with questions, but
Okay.
To keep things moving, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next speaker.
Sure. Thank you.
Brianna Warner.
Good evening. My name's Brianna Warner, and Heather asked me to speak tonight just as a mom of one of the current dancers at the dance studio. From reading some of the letters over here this evening, I understand it seems to me that parking is the biggest issue, from what I can ascertain. And I was kind of wondering why that was, because at our current location it doesn't seem to be an issue at all. One of the big reasons is because the dance studio is operating generally after typical business hours. So people go home from the general businesses, and then us moms come in to drop off our kids throughout the rest of the evening, and parking isn't an issue at all. So what I did as a mom is like, what's going on? I don't understand what the problem is. So I started driving through the new location during business hours, and I said, yeah, wow, I can see why there would be some concern here. I can see that Service Master has, takes up this whole kind of, I don't know what you call it, but this like alleyway area on the side. They constantly have trucks there. It's not very pleasant looking. And then when I drove in there during normal business hours, there was not a spot open. There was hardly a single spot open. So then I thought, okay, well, this could be an issue for this type of a business. And as a mom, I don't really want to deal with a constant stress of finding parking and getting my kid from this lot over here all the way to Extreme over there. And so what I started doing was driving through the parking lot when I would drop off my daughter or right before that. And what I came to notice is that the parking lot's totally empty at those times when I'm driving through. At max, there were 3 cars today when I drove through, and about 4 cars yesterday. So I don't see the parking issue as being a problem at all. I think it could be easily alleviated by some of the suggestions that Heather has made and just by the general ins and out of the way the business works. Also, as busy moms, we're constantly talking with others within the community about how we can carpool, because none of us can be in two places at once. So, for example, on Mondays, I take 6 children to Extreme at one time and pick up 4 at the back end 2 hours later. So that helps alleviate a lot of the parking issues as well. If you have 10 girls dancing in one class at once, one given time, you might have 3 cars max dropping off. So just to give you an idea of kind of how it works within the parking situation. And as far as the kids loitering and playing in the parking lot, I've never seen that happen. As a mom, I would never allow that to happen. And I would, even if my child was not one of the ones, or even if it wasn't my child playing out in the parking lot, I would certainly feel comfortable going up to that child and say, "Excuse me, you're not allowed to be out here. You need to go back inside the studio." But again, I've never seen that happen. So I think this red light means my time is up. Okay. Thank you very much.
Actually, and before you go, I'm going to take a very brief liberty. I just have a question that I think a mom would be the best one to answer, if there's any more in the audience. When you talked about dropping off and picking up 2 hours later, is it normal that, I don't know what the age group of your kids are, I don't necessarily need to know, is that fairly standard as moms that you're dropping off and leaving and coming back 2 hours later, or is there a lot of hanging out and watching?
There is definitely some of both, but generally it's mostly dropping off and leaving because, as Heather mentioned, our kids are there for 2, 3, 4 hours, and none of us have time to sit there and watch for that amount of time. With the younger kids, sometimes you will get the moms with the 5-year-olds, they'll want to be there to watch, but again, a lot of those moms have other children going to baseball or here or there, so you do have a lot of that, again, carpooling, drop-off, pick-up kind of scenario.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Scott Betty.
And very briefly, I don't think I it on the first 2 speakers, but please state for the record your name and city of residence.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Scott Betty. I'm a resident of Foothill Ranch, so thanks for having me up here. I'm the father of 3 girls, all of whom attend the dance studio, so I'm blessed with karma that has been exercised on me by having 3 daughters. But really the thing I want to impress upon you guys is Extreme Dance is more than just a local business in need of a new facility. In many ways, it's a second home for an amazing group of girls supported by a very committed group of parents who see the value of dance as a vehicle to teach self-confidence, integrity, teamwork, and the importance of physical fitness. My own girls are at the dance studio a combination of 8 to 10 hours a week. My oldest is 12, my youngest is soon to be 7, and for them, this really is a home away from home. Now they're becoming smart, independent, confident young women, and Extreme Dance plays a huge role in that growth for these girls. Now we have a very close, supportive group of families who carpool to and from the studio. I myself, when I pick up, I typically have girls from 2 to 3 families. When I pick up my own daughters, their neighbors, we drop them off, and I know those same neighbors pick up my girls to drop them off at the studio. And carpooling is a way of life for us who have kids with busy schedules on different sports teams and or even different schedules within the studio itself. Trust me, it is not the drive-through at In-N-Out. It is not a long line of cars with a single person behind the wheel picking up a hamburger or a cheeseburger. It is families who are there to support their children. They carpool out of efficiency. We all do it, and it's a necessity in our busy lives. Now, we feel comfortable with our kids spending 2 to 4 hours at that studio because we know it's a safe environment. The kids are inside the studio. They're never outside the studio. When I pick my children up, I have to get out of the car, give them a wave. That's when they come out of the studio to hop into the car and we head home. They don't loiter outside. They don't spend any time outside. The kids go in and out of the building because that's their home. That's their safe spot. They want to be in the studio. That's where their friends are at. It is not allowed to hang outside of the studio. in the end, this is more than a business. It's a community within a community. The families support the kids support one another, and the studio provides a very safe environment for them to be able to dance. And supporting this business effectively is supporting the kids of this city. So, thank you for my time.
Thank you.
Dan Haid?
Good evening. My name is Dan Height. I am owner of a business at 9 Rancho Circle, Visual Light Technologies. We've been in Lake Forest since 2005, manufacturing high-end LED and fiber optic lighting that is used worldwide. There is some, I oppose this approval on several different reasons. Mainly, this business park is not a retail environment. This business park is commercial buildings. These are large commercial buildings. Different when they are right now. Where they are right now is a bunch of smaller buildings. There are a couple large buildings, but majority of them are smaller. They do not have 45-foot truck, 18-wheel trucks coming in there on a daily basis, picking up and delivering. In our facilities, we have us who have a 20-hour shift. We have 2 shifts. We work from 6 o'clock in the morning to 1:45 in our double facilities with deliveries of heavy plastic forklift activity in our complex. Also, right in the main is a large carpet warehouse, a distribution center. They have large 45-foot Shaw trucks that do deliveries, and we have forklift activities. And so these trucks are actively moving into the warehouse. So this is a different complex. This is not a retail complex. We had a retail store. It moved out. It sold mattresses. It did not survive. This is, no one comes into for retail. It's business to business. We have a theatrical lighting company who does heavy truss loading and unloading of truss and lighting. And so this is not a normal facility. So having a facility in here that is going to take us some dedicated parking spots is an issue. She's asking for a waiver to put a drop-off area in. This would violate our CC&Rs. All the parking spots that are in our facility are owned by the association. So by dedicating 3 parking spots to her drop-off area, which she's asking for, would violate our CC&Rs, which is a false statement that's been made in your proposal here. So, so right now, every building has 2 spaces for visitor, but there's only a courtesy. So, also her schedule that she shows that there's classes every 45 minutes to an hour. So she talks about classes being 2-3 hours long. I don't see that in her schedule. Her schedule is nice and color-coded. Every 45 minutes there's classes. Every hour is coming and going. They talk about little kids, 3-5 years old, learning tap and those kind of things. It's a dance studio. It's not an athletic facility. I think she should be held up to the same parking standards that she is in right now, which is 1 to 150. So her current facility requires parking spots of 1 to 150. Her new facility is. There are a lot of the facilities in the city of Lake Forest that are available to her to rent or buy. And they're easy to find, and they're available, and they have better parking. So I would recommend that you deny this, and because this facility and our complex is not designed for this kind of operation. Thank you.
Sir? Sorry. I didn't catch the name. It's Dan, Dave? Dan, thank you. I have a question for you. Sorry.
Sure.
You are a tenant in building number 9.
Yes, I am.
Okay. This question is for you because I think you're the best suited knowing this site. I noticed that there's a lot of parking available on the north side and on the east side of this complex.
Near the tollway on Bake Parkway?
No, unless I have it wrong, I'm looking at a site plan here
Okay.
that shows parking along buildings 9 through 20.
Yes, okay.
Okay, and then on the north end, adjacent to SR 241, there's appears to be, quote, abundant spaces.
Okay.
Okay, now who occupies those spaces? I can see the congestion between buildings 21 and 28. That's very tight, and it looks like everybody's struggling for the same space.
Yes.
So what happens on a daily basis with these other parking
So,
spaces?
first of all, all those buildings that you have there share a common driveway. So there's only one driveway in and out of the complex. The parking study that was done did not take in consideration that activity that we have the common driveway. Up near the toll road, where on the 241 is, that is where Golden West Carpet is, and that is where these large trucks come in. So the large trucks, they come up the driveway, up along Big Parkway, and turn and come down the main drag and drop off at the carpet facility. On our side, 10 was just sold, and we have a new manufacturing company coming in that repairs equipment. There is Expedient Healthcare. They do wheelchair repairs, and a healthcare company. We also have a computer company. There's a fastener company at the very north end of 241 who sells screws, nuts, and bolts, and they have deliveries all the time of pallets and stuff. There's also a large electrical distribution company up there also, and they have large trucks that come in on a daily basis for circuit breakers and lighting fixtures and that kind of stuff that get
Mr. Chairman, a follow-up question, please. Maybe you misunderstood my question.
Yeah.
Buildings 9 through 20 front the east side.
Yes.
There appears to be, I'm going to use the word ample,
I'm
parking on the east side and on the north side. And if you look at the Loop Drive where Building 28 is, that's very congested and has limited parking.
Yes.
But there appears to be ample parking on the north side and the east side.
Yeah.
And my question to you was, who uses the spaces on the east side and the north side?
Well, they're used. They're all all those spots that are on the east side and the north side are used by the people in those buildings. We have 22 employees in our building, and so all the spots that are in front of my building number 9 are full. And building number 10 is now empty, and it's a new tenant coming in. But everywhere up on the east side, they are full on a daily basis. There's no ample parking. Every spot, those buildings, my building's 8,000 square feet. I have 26 parking spots assigned to me, and we use every single one. So the buildings are larger, and they've been allocated the parking spots for their use, appropriate use per warehouse space or office space, 250 per square foot or 500 per square foot per parking spot, depending upon their layout. Every building has a warehouse in back, so my building's 8,000 square feet. I'm allowed 3,000 square feet of office and 5,000 square feet of warehouse, and that's how I get my 20-some-odd parking spots. I would love to build out more office space in my facility, but I can't due to the code because I don't have enough parking spots. So we can't. No one can expand because there's no parking, and so those spots are full on the north side, on the east side.
Mr. Chairman, I know it's unusual, if you allow me, one last follow-up question. Let me ask you this. If this proposal was denied and this group went away,
Yes.
someone else would come and want to occupy Building 28.
Yes.
Would you have a similar problem? How would the problem be lessened if a different tenant came into 28? Wouldn't there be some parking impacts as well?
No, because they would have to adhere to the building codes of Lake Forest and have and only build out the facility to have so much warehouse and so much parking. The issue with this facility is the retail, the excess traffic that we are going to get on coming and going into this facility, and the dangers that the traffic pose to the kids coming and going, and the violation of the CCRs because they're asking for that 3 spaces be dedicated to her, which is against our CCNRs. So it is the resolution says it won't violate our CCNRs. It will, because they're asking for 3 dedicated spots, just this facility, for a drop-off and pickup location, which no one else has that privilege in our facility. It's owned by and maintained. The dues that I pay on my building assume that's a commercial light industrial. This was zoned as commercial light industrial when initial planning was done for it. And that this is outside the scope of what we want there. It's a dance studio moving in. You have rules for a dance studio for parking facilities, and I think you should adhere to the same rules that you've already have in your code, as a dance studio is 1 to 150.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I have a question. Mr. High, I have a question for you. What hours do the large trucks normally appear in your complex?
They appear 2 heavy times a day. So we have morning drop-off. So we have UPS, FedEx, those kind of guys running through our facilities from 8 o'clock to 10:30. And then starting about 2 o'clock, you have all the pickups of the heavy-duty trucks, the LTLs, the 18-wheelers. Final pickup for UPS is 5 o'clock, 5:30ish. So from 2 o'clock to about 5:30, we have heavy trucks in the facility doing those pickups. And the schedule that she has on her current website, classes start at 3 o'clock, right when heavy trucks, prime time for pickup and cut off for the heavy truck deliveries.
Okay, thank you very much.
May I also have an opportunity? I want to make sure I'm hearing correctly. You said your building was about 9,000 square feet. Did I?
We're 8,080.
Okay, and you have 26 parking sites.
21, 26, somewhere there.
Oh, 20
24.
Okay, 24.
24.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Hope I get this right. Andy Gastero?
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Andy Guastafaro, and I am a resident of Lake Forest. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Sewing Circle. We are at 28 Rancho Circle, and we are, 29. We are talking about 28. We're 29. We share the small parking lot adjacent to 28. First of all, I just want to thank Ms. Van Hooley and Ms. Warner and Mr. Betty for their comments. I am a father of 3 young ones under the age of 5, and so can certainly appreciate the perspective, and do want to state, first of all, that a business like Extreme Dance Center is certainly welcome. Sounds like they have an excellent program and provide excellent programs for the kids in our city. And we do appreciate the work that has gone into the parking study. However, the greater concern for us is, has been stated and addressed, is the traffic and the safety. The comments that I have are from the report that was given to us, and that's the only real objective data that we have. So first, the traffic. If you would refer to Figure 3 on page 16 of the final report. Figure 3 shows where we are located at 29 and in relation to the project site. As you'll notice that our complex has a single ingress, egress, so there's only one in and out. Otherwise, you have to take a big loop around the entire complex. And so it's likely that parents will utilize that small adjacent parking lot that you notice that we share as a turnaround while waiting for and dropping off students. And so as they come in here, as you can see, they're coming in and they're waiting. They have to have somewhere to wait. So they can either wait in the Rancho Circle or they can kind of cruise around that adjacent parking lot, which is where most of our employees and visitors park. According to Appendix B, which is on pages 55 to 58, the study shows a drop-off and pickup counts, and based upon that study, we see that 44 vehicles were reported as dropping off and picking up children. These are vehicles that are not parking, and this is between the hours of 3:30 and 5:30. So we believe that consideration should be made to the fact that parents will likely arrive for early pickup and will wait on the internal streets, such as this parking lot, or on Rancho Circle rather than parking. I know that's been addressed tonight, but this is based upon the study that we're seeing. They may, it's possible, wait for an entire class duration. Of course, it seems that there's students who are there for several hours, but there are, on the schedule, as was also stated, that the schedule shows 30 to, I believe, 45-minute to 1-hour classes that are back-to-back. If a red light on here means I need to stop. Time's up.
You can finish your sentence. Go ahead and
okay.
You can wrap your
Okay.
thought.
The thought is this: based upon the traffic and based upon that, really the key issue for us is safety. And so, even though what has been said, I mean, I appreciate what's been said, but the concern is 6 months, 1 year down the road, we've got people who are parking, our parents going to be waiting, our kids going to be getting out. Appreciate whatever measures. Parents are difficult to regulate. Employees are difficult enough to regulate, let alone parents. And so I think our concern is, as our employees and visitors back out and are looking over shoulders, we don't want to be liable. First of all, not even about the liability. We don't want anyone to get hurt. That's our primary concern. And secondly, there's some liabilities there that we're concerned about as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Yes.
My name is Steve Greenberg. I live in Tustin, and I also serve at the Sewing Circle Unit 29. Well, as I heard about this proposal, I asked some questions, and I thought, you know, I've been dealing with Service Master for 4 or 5 years, and they've been very cooperative, but it's been a huge issue. And I never made one complaint. And I thought, you know, I'll go over to the neighborhood where they're at. So I went over to the next door neighbor and asked, you know, how's your neighbor? And they said, great. We get off about 3, no problem. I went to the next neighbor and they said, no problem. Great. I went to the next neighbor and I thought, you know, certainly everything that I've read, everything I heard would be great, and this is a mute issue. I went to the next neighbor that's directly across. I talked to 2 people in the business. They said that it was a horrible situation. They told me that they had no parking spots from 4 to 5. The parents were rude and inconsiderate. They stopped right in front of their place. They let the kids out, and they just sat there. They had an accident. They ran into one of their employees' cars there in the parking facility. They said from 3:30 to 5 it's a nightmare. They said when they leave to go run errands and come back, there is no parking spots. So sometimes I wonder when I hear things that people say, and then you just go and ask, you know, hey, what is the reality of this? I was shocked, because I have nothing against extreme dance, but when I hear the neighbor that's directly across them, and I talked to 2 people within the building, and they said it was a horrible situation. And I'm just like, they said that people sat in the car, sometimes for 45 minutes. And I hear this stuff like, oh, it's every 2 hours. I look at the program, it's every 45 minutes. And the huge issue is from 3:45 to 5. That's the issue. That's where the chaos is. So though there might have been no complaints, there's a couple unhappy people in the building right across from there where they're at. And I didn't go too much further, and I thought, wow, you know, that is of great concern to me. I wouldn't mind if they were under the requirements and everything was great, but for them to keep saying that, you know, oh, it's no problem parking, it's no problem 2-hour classes, it's no problem. How can you say that? The neighbor, their hood they're in, the neighbors has problems. The parking, they said, was horrendous. They have a 2-way parking lot where they can go in and out. We only have 1. I'm like going, I'm sorry. I'm like, they're asking for special permission to be there. How are they doing that? By asking for 3 parking spots. We wanted 3 parking spots. They said no, and then we found the 2 that we thought we had. We don't really have anyway. They're reallocating those 2 spots, which is against the guidelines that you guys have set up.
Okay. Thank you. Your light's starting to blink. So.
Oh.
Thank you, sir.
Monica Haid.
Hi, my name is Monica Height. You heard from my husband Dan earlier. I'm the owner of building number 9. I'm the owner-operator. I've also been on the board in one various officer capacity for the past 10 years. My husband and I own and operate a light manufacturing facility, Visual Lighting Technologies, and we have done so in 2 separate buildings now, one being at 9 Rancho for the past 10 years, over the past 10 years, actually. Being that I've been on the board for over 10 years now, I have intimate knowledge not only with the Rancho Business Center, but actually because of my service on the board at Rancho Business Center, I ended up being and serving for the last over 5 years as the president of the board for the Master Association, to which the Rancho Business Center is a sub-association member for the A.J. West Business Center, to which the Foothill Business property where Extreme Dance is currently, that sub-association is also a sub-association member. It is through the fact that the current owners of the building, the current owners in the in the Rancho Business Center, the vast majority of the businesses operating in the center are owner-operated. And as a result, in the past 10 years, we have managed, even through the downturn and the economic downturn, to manage through and wary the economic downturn as a result, because we have been interested in the park, we have maintained the park, and we have done so because the owners are there. We come every day to work, and we pay special attention. My husband and myself, we employ nearly 50 people, made in the USA product. I can appreciate, I'm a mother myself, I understand that businesses like Extreme Dance need to exist. They need to exist in the Lake Forest community. They don't need to exist in this industrial park. There is a prime opportunity for which they are saying that they are the appropriate zoning, trying to say that they're industrial, or they're calling it an indoor facility, which is not what this zoning is based on the site development permit for 2002 and 12, which if you go back to the general use plan that the city did back when this was developed, we are industrial and commercial. Their definition of they're calling this trying to get around the parking requirements that are laid out by city code. They're trying to say that they were a special exemption because they're an indoor facility. That definition that was amended with the Planning Commission under 2012 was specifically laid out for the Baker Ranch residential commercial use. And I agree with them to the extent that they should be going up to Bake and Alton, where they have the apartment buildings, where right now they're currently leasing build-to-suit properties right at the Avalon luxury residential and commercial split-use properties. That would be a perfect place for a dance studio, not this industrial park. If I may, I would like to request additional time. I have specific knowledge to this park.
I have a specific question as well, so I'm going to go ahead and, I got to check with my city attorney. I'm new to this role, so I want to make sure I'm not getting myself in trouble by saying yes if I say yes.
Well, the chair runs the meeting, so you certainly have discretion, but I would caution the chair to make sure that everybody gets...
Right, that was my concern. And so I actually have a couple of questions. So, in order to be consistent, I'm going to go ahead and stop on your presentation, but I may end up asking you questions that will allow you to discuss what you want to do anyway.
Okay.
But I at least have a question for you as a board member.
Yes.
In that capacity. I know there's several individual businesses that have spoken and/or sent letters. Has there been any action on behalf of
the entire board unanimously objects to the Extreme Dance's request for the 3 parking, and under our CC&Rs, under Article 7.3, our CC&Rs specifically grant the board and the board alone the authority to enforce the parking and vehicle regulations pursuant to the California Code, Section 22658, which respects to towing, the authority of towing, the ownership of the maintenance, maintenance property. The maintenance property defined by our CC&Rs is the parking areas and the landscape areas.
Right. I certainly don't mean to be rude. I'm
sorry. I just thought I was answering.
No, you are. You're going into the specifics of CC&Rs, which
Well, part of the assertion in their application is that if you grant this site permit, that nothing that the Planning Commission would do would violate our CC&Rs, and there's actual nuisance violation.
I apologize for cutting you off. I'm not actually allowed to get into a back and forth.
Okay.
May I just ask a quick clarification? Because I don't see 3 parking places in our report. Staff?
So originally, the city had asked her to ask the board if they could have 3 spots designated for drop-off pickup. We thought it would be a good idea. The board said no, so she did eliminate that from her proposal.
Okay. So at least that aspect's been dealt with. But And again, I do appreciate your concerns and your comments, but I know we have others, and we kind of need to try to stay on schedule, so.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question of the speaker? I'm looking at a document here that says that Unit 9, which is your unit, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Is allocated 40.2 spaces.
If I could speak to there's several fallacies in the applicant's proposal that is incorrect. The chart that she shows goes through, and here's where, if you look to section 9.168070 of the Lake Forest Parking Code, and where it talks about doing an appropriate parking study, the parking study that was performed by Extreme Dance is wholly insufficient and doesn't meet the minimum applications to even come up to the appropriate standards for a shared parking study. Specifically, here laid out in our CC&Rs, based on the original planning zoning regulations, for a commercial and industrial park, the park has to be meeting parking regulations according to a build-out based on manufacturing/warehouse space and administrative offices space. In 9.168070, if you go down then from the next page, the subsets of that, Lake Forest, the City of Lake Forest, and this Planning Commission laid out what each subset of activity requires for that. Specifically, for warehouse manufacturing, it's one space to 500 square feet of floor space, one stall to 250 for office space, one space for 150 square feet of dance studio. If you want to call this an indoor athletic facility, like she's contending, and then by definition in her own application, an indoor athletics facility is defined as including but not limited to an ice skating rink, a roller rink, a gymnasium, things like that. That's a 1 to 100.
I do think
we're off target.
Yeah, I do think we're all familiar with the code.
Yeah, okay, but we're off target.
Well, but the staff's recommendation is based,
Okay, I'm asking you specifically here, because I was This is our CC&Rs. Okay, I don't need that. All right. What I need to know is, I was told that your husband stated between 21 to 24 parking spaces, and I'm looking at this chart, and it says that your building has 40.2 allocated. I'm trying to understand where this information came from, and what are we reasonably should rely upon.
I don't know where that information came from. It came from the applicant.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
It did not come from our CC&Rs in the City of Lake Forest.
Okay. What we're saying is you don't know where it came from, and we need to do the investigation to find out where this was.
Okay. I'm going to actually ask. It sounds like Jennifer might have information on that.
Just to clarify, the table that is in here is based on the original entitlement from the city. So this is when it was originally developed in 2002, this was the entitlement. This is how the parking was calculated per building. And so we use our entitlement, not what they have in their CC&Rs, which hopefully is close. And just to clarify, it's complicated because it was developed before the development of the center. So you're looking at building 9 versus address 9. And the parking is based on each building, so you have to kind of calculate out which, if there's 3 tenants in one building, then you have to calculate the proportion each one gets. So that's what we did for 28 Rancho. But so to figure out the parking, you have to do a couple calculations to make that work. If that understands. So this is a city document, not the CC&Rs, and not from the applicant.
Okay. Thanks, Jennifer. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
May I just speak to that?
I don't think at this point. Again, I'm not trying to be rude to you. By law, we're not allowed to get into a back and forth. And so I want to keep things moving. I actually do have a question for, and I'm not even going to try to butcher the last name, Andy from Sewing Circle.
Okay. Well, I submitted, the last thing I want to say, I did submit everything that I didn't get to say in writing, and there's attached documents that are public record that I think that you need to review.
Okay. Thank you. I have it here. I have it. Thank you for coming back up. As the owner for 29, I wanted to ask you a quick question. with Service Master, and I know the other gentleman that was from Sewing Center, or Sewing Circle rather, also commented on having Service Master as a neighbor. I realized that the applicant had originally asked for, and it sounds like at the city's request, the 3 parking variance, which was denied.
Okay.
My question is, I'm assuming Service Master also doesn't have any additional parking variances, but in this picture from the aerial shot that the city uses, and when I drove through, there was at least 13 Service Master trucks in that parking lot.
Correct.
So if they're not going to be there anymore, cars will come and go. Some may stay for 45 minutes, as was stated. Some may sit and whatnot. But do you anticipate that, and I don't want to rehash your safety concerns, they're valid, I understand it,
Sure.
just specific to the parking, it strikes me that would be, at best, a wash. I mean, at worst, rather, a wash. You know, it wouldn't, because they're there all the time. I drive through, I manage a pickup 6 in Foothill Ranch, and I drive into that plaza to deliver food for catering events, and I mean, I understand the narrow passageways and the single ingress egress. I have firsthand knowledge. I'm just specific to that little parking lot.
Yeah. No. I think that's the less of our concern. I think the bigger concern is just, as stated in my letters, when it comes to parking, is just, I think, a general common understanding among the business owners is that we have allotted spaces. They're not specific. We allow one another to speak directly, or to park adjacent to the buildings. Service Master, they were just parking along our side, and it's just something that we work out. And so I think the bigger concern was, you know, is our parents going to be coming in without regard to just a normal, reasonable business operations. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Okay. So at this time, I'll bring it back up to the commission. Are there any additional questions or concerns, discussion?
I'd like a clarification of the zoning.
Excuse me, can I interrupt for a second? Mr. Chair, would it be appropriate at this time for you to close the public hearing if you're not taking any more public testimony unless you anticipate calling people back?
It's kind of become our practice over the last 2 years to do it as part of whatever motion.
Okay.
So, okay.
I'd like to ask staff to get a clarification of the zoning and how that was arrived at.
The zoning of the property?
Yeah, the zoning for this dance studio.
I think
this dance facility.
I'm guessing, if I can clarify the question, the designation as an indoor athletic facility.
Indoor athletic facility?
I'd really like to understand your interpretation of how you came to that conclusion.
We've used the indoor athletic facility for a lot of other uses recently. The gymnastics studio, the OC dance and cheer. In our land use table, there's also commercial recreation, but it would actually require the same requirement of the site development permit. So even if you called it something slightly different, it's probably the same process for that.
Do the parking standards change with those two that you just mentioned?
So as you know, our parking standards haven't changed in a long time, and so neither of those are addressed in our parking code.
Are we privy to, if we know, Jennifer, that if this retail business is in violation of the CC&Rs for the Rancho Business Owners Association?
Just in my conversation with the manager from there, she said there's nothing in the CC&Rs that prohibit this use at this location. And they did say they wouldn't allow the 3 designated spaces, which is why she eliminated it from her proposal.
Now, when I was there, there were some parking spaces that were designated.
According to the property manager there, they kind of have a policy that they allow 2 courtesy spaces per building. And I think they're just marked visitor. I guess maybe someone could speak to that, but each one, they are allowed to stripe 2 spaces, and that's a policy they have.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I was actually, I will ask you to come up to address that if we can stay on that. Thank you.
The history of how that came about.
Wait to get the mic, please. It's being recorded and broadcast. And just so we have a clean record, if you could start with restating your name.
The history of how that came about is because all the parking spaces are none of the parking spaces are owned by the individual units, and they're all shared parking. And because going back 8 years, the city and this planning commission would not allow for any, it was to the parking code was very specific to how buildings had to be built out. And because they're all shared parking, in the way that the CCNRs called out and said that the board was required as private property to control, maintain, and as maintenance property, control the maintenance and enforce the parking code on the private property, that we had to make sure that, and only the board had the authority to tow and everything else in the park. And as a result, the building owners at the time, especially 8 years ago, we had a 95% owner-occupied rate in terms of the business park, many of which were using these as their, day in, day out. There's going to be, owner-occupied businesses, and so they wanted to be able to park in front of their buildings. So, as a courtesy, it was written in as a courtesy, without sacrificing the association's ability to still have the ownership and right to own, granted the use to have 2 spots striped, still only granting the right of enjoyment and the right to use.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, thank you. Thank you for I appreciate the clarification.
Can I just say one more thing? We've had this other situation with another owner who wanted to put an electric car on one of those spots.
But I understand, but it's not germane to the current question. Sorry.
My name is Jenny Leone. I serve as I work for Essex Realty, and I manage the property for the board of directors and the members.
Okay. Thank you. I have one more comment card.
Dennis Nige? No.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dennis. I'm the owner of 27 Rancho, the adjacent touching building, actually. And I'm not very prepared for this hearing, so I want to keep it short and direct, and I'm sure everyone wants to get out here as soon as possible, too. My issue with this dance studio moving in is the liability issue. And for me, as a light manufacturer, we have a lot of freight trucks coming in and out. And these are large trucks carrying pallets at a time. If there are kids or people loitering around, running around the streets, and I hope they don't, God forbid, that an accident may happen. Now, that's a huge liability for me as also the owner of the building touching this building, but probably for other buildings surrounding them that have freight trucks coming in too. I'm starting to understand that the parking won't be an issue during the early day or the early afternoon. However, there's businesses here that run 2 shifts a day. For me, my company, for example, runs 2 shifts, 6 to 7 every day. Except for Sundays. Actually, Saturdays we run one shift. And I, from what I read, they also have classes on Saturday or festivities. The other issue that I have that I'm not exactly for sure, because I will have to do my own investigation, is whether or not the music from the building will seep through the walls touching my building, in between both our buildings. If that's the case, then it will be a distraction for my manufacturing operators, and there may be an accident that may happen within my building. And I need to watch out for them, their safety, and also for the well-being of my company. Other than that, I don't really have any other topics to address upon, but if you have any questions, I will freely answer.
Hi, Dennis. We spoke on phone.
Oh, yeah.
I'm declaring that. What time does your second shift start?
It starts at, I have people come in at 11, so my first shift starts at 6, and then there's an overlap. We're trying to press it a little bit longer, so that I want people to come in around 12, so it might go all the way till 8:30.
So technically, if your people were coming at 12, there'd be a lot of parking spots. Based on your comment just a minute ago saying that until 3 or 3:45, there shouldn't be a parking problem.
Is when they come in.
Right.
However, I think the problem is the trucks that come into our area.
I was only concerned about your employees and your shift that would start at noon. Would your employees find a spot to park at noon, do you think?
That's kind of difficult to say. A lot of times.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Noel, what type of manufacturing do you do?
Dietary supplements.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Were there any more comments or questions on?
I want to take this back to staff. Jennifer, if I'm looking at this chart, I think I'm looking at it correctly. Now, as I look at this, I'm not looking at the building numbers per se, I'm looking at the addresses. Address 27 and address 29 look like they are pretty much identical in terms of their office square footage, their total square footage, and so forth. And since our concerns are buildings, the parking area primarily between addresses 28 and 29, if I look at 28 and 29 coupled up, and it shows that they've got allocated roughly 52 parking spaces. Do I see that correctly?
Yeah, between the two addresses.
Okay, so that parking zone between the two of them, and I get where we're going with this. I mean, parking was the first thing that struck me when I drove out there. I've been in the complex area. I can see where some of the comments being made by some in the audience about delivery trucks and so forth. They're going to do, I would imagine that they're going to potentially do where the service master trucks are. They'll probably use that as a horseshoe turnaround kind of an area, if that's the case. But if we've got 52 parking spaces between those two, then that breaks down to 26 each. And that's kind of consistent with the address number 9 that's got over 8,000 square feet, having roughly 26 spots. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that we have enough parking, and I'm not overly concerned that the dance studio is going to have a high ratio of on-site parking, as many of these businesses would. So do I have those numbers kind of correct?
Yeah, I think they're estimated, but yes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, I actually have a question for the applicant. Told you I might bring you back up. So. All right, thank you. Okay, so my question is, at the moment, the last speaker, your immediate neighbor, if this goes forward, with the shared walls, that was actually one of two major concerns that I had when I read that packet, as well as the letter that was submitted by the owner. Is there remedial measures needed or in use at your current place? I'm in a business park there that you have shared walls as well, so I'm curious if you could address that.
We have shared walls, but we also have very thin shared walls. They're much smaller. They're leased kind of like office spaces versus these buildings. At least the times that I have been inside 28 Rancho, I haven't heard anything from 27 or which would be the sharing walls, and I have been in that area for actually more than probably 2 or 3 times now often for over an hour each time. My current space, when I very first moved in, it was in my lease that if we had any sort of sound issues or any neighbors complaining, that it was my job to then soundproof the studio, which of course scared me because that was thousands and thousands of dollars to do. And we've had several businesses become our neighbor and go in and out as long as we have been there, and we have not had one complaint. I do think that, I can hear them. I believe that it has always worked out because our hours of operation, and also we're not, our kids are kids, so we're not blasting it beyond, it's kids' music often. It's not, Metallica in going crazy music. So I don't know why there haven't been other complaints, or any complaints, excuse me. I have not had to do any soundproofing, and as I've been in 28 Rancho, I've not heard the neighbors.
Okay.
There.
And as a follow-up question to that, and you kind of touched on it, but my follow-up question was going to be style of music and volume. Because I went into Joanne Fabrics yesterday morning that shares a wall with 24-Hour Fitness, and they were doing Payo or something, high-tempo, techno. It was rattling the walls inside the craft store, and I'm curious. So that was my concern.
Sure. It varies. Obviously, there's different styles of dance being taught there, and different teams working on different things. However, I do have complete control over who goes in what areas. Our front room is going to be designated for mostly private lessons, which shouldn't really be a lot of music actually going on at all. And the back room that is would share, the only other one that would actually share a wall, the other room that you can see on the floor plan, which right now is noted as Studio 3, has a stairwell in between. And there is a finished ceiling as well on this, which in my current location, the sound that we hear was only an issue because the ceilings were not finished, meaning we can hear the people next door. This does have a finished ceiling up top, and then the stairwell in between for Studio 3. Studio 2 would have one area in the very back that is 28 feet, and that should be the only area that would have music playing. And again, as I have full control over who goes in what room, that could certainly be my ballet room, which would be more of a classical music, and soft, nothing too jarring or...
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Question for staff, Mr. Chairman? Christina, I had heard in somebody was speaking that we would be in violation by passing this particular, granting this usage. Do you see that there's any violation to city code, to...
Vice Chair Fuentes, I think the comment that I heard was that approval of this application might result in a violation of the CCNRs. I think that's what I heard. Of course, this application approval doesn't violate the CCNRs. It would take conduct by the tenant to constitute a violation of the CCNRs. But the mere approval of this application, I don't believe could constitute a violation of the CCNRs. You're not subject to them,
right?
So you can't violate them.
Now, maybe Jennifer can answer this next follow-up. I also heard that the Planning Commission designated the parking.
Yeah, the original entitlement for the property, which was site development permit 2002-12, because it was a situation where there are condominiums, they were subdivided into condominiums. At the time, they basically allotted everyone a certain number of parking spaces based on what they assumed would be there. Because when you get into the shared parking, and in this instance, it's good to see how many spaces you have allocated so that if you change the uses, you make sure you work within the number of parking stalls you have. That makes sense?
It does. Is that something that we regulate, or we look to the
So
business owners to regulate?
When we have tenant improvements in these buildings, over the counter, we look at the parking for every time they make tenant improvements to a site. And we ensure that they are meeting the city's parking requirement.
And you're clear that Extreme Dance is meeting the city's parking regulations as we've discussed tonight?
Based on the parking study, yes.
And then follow up on that. I heard that it wasn't a valid parking study. Is this parking study valid in your opinion?
Yes, we had it, a licensed engineer prepared the study, and our traffic engineer and the planners have reviewed it.
Thank you.
Any additional, or would somebody like to, I'd be willing to entertain a motion.
Before we go to a motion, I looked through this again, and I didn't see any condition in the conditions. I didn't see anything about soundproofing, and I think I would like to, if this is going to go forward, I'd like to make sure that that gets added, that in the event that there is a need, that it's already recorded with the the approval, if in fact it is approved, that once a need is verified, that becomes a condition, an enforceable condition. I think I'm okay with that, right?
You can place a condition with respect to sound. I think you'd want to be clear on the standards that, or the measures that have to be determined, or have to be exceeded before requiring the applicant to soundproof. In other words, you're going to have some objective criteria to measure.
Okay. You want to give us a little assistance on how we might structure that? Is there something that you can recommend?
I'd be happy to work with the planning department if that's the direction that the commission would like to go on that.
Okay. Yeah. If we are going to move forward, I'd like to have that in there just to provide the security that the adjacent business owner, if it were that situation, we don't want to. We don't want to, interfere with their rightful enjoyment of their property.
Mr. Chair. Okay. Actually, if I could go back to the applicant for one quick question. You mentioned that it was a condition of your lease in the other location. Is it included in the lease at this location, or is it not?
It is not.
Okay. Thank you.
Not currently.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if maybe we could exchange comments here before a motion is made.
Sure.
Okay. So any of us wanting to say something can say something before a motion is made. And I'd like to not go first.
Okay. Mr. Ludd.
I have a question to the applicant about, you mentioned before if there was a problem with the parking, there was some option to adjust your schedule. How would that work? It sounds like you've got quite a bit of concern with your neighbors around you about how you're going to deal with the parents that come and go, and whether they loiter or, it sounds like it's more of an issue with the parents loitering than it is with the children. How would you deal with that, and how would you deal with the scheduling problem with the trucks and the other things? I am concerned about the trucks. The trucks bother me, and I don't have a real good, warm, fuzzy feeling about that yet.
Sure. Our schedule is, again, in our control. So if I have to move times, I can move times. Just to speak to that, it does show on our schedule that classes are done 45 minutes to an hour, and the kids do come and they stay for long periods of time, taking several classes back to back. So to clarify what that is, that's why most of our parents do drop off, because they are not sitting and watching. I have not seen our parents loitering ever in the current space that we've been in. Typically, based on our location, they drop the kids off. Most of them will pull into a parking space, drop them off, leave, come back 2 or 3 hours later. Some of them do stay if they are younger, but currently we've never had more than 10 people stay at a time in our lobby, in our current space, which we are in a smaller location, and we have a lot less parking. But we currently right now also do not use anybody else's parking. We only use our own parking. So we haven't had any sort of issues with that, but if I needed to, and some of my classes needed to be conducted at different times, and that was something that became, an issue, then I would move it. I would change the schedule.
How would you handle the situation where all the parking spaces in front of your particular unit are filled and the parents need to drop off, and they're not filled with people? They're filled from people from other buildings around you, which it sounds like could happen. How would you deal with that situation?
Gosh. Well, that's not something that has happened in our current space because of the fact that most of our classes, the bulk of our people are coming after 5 p.m. As far as I understand it, a lot of the building that is directly across from 28 ends at 4 p.m. The one next to that ends at 3:30. I went and found out these hours of operation to see if that would be a problem. As far as them parking, I didn't know personally that it was a shared parking experience. I was told that these were my allocated parking and that that's where my people are supposed to park. I certainly wouldn't instruct them to park anywhere else unless it was way after business hours. But I don't foresee that being an issue.
I get the impression your homeowners association over there is not, your condominium association is not going to be particularly cooperative.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's a courtesy. I doubt that they're necessarily going to enforce that. I did hear Mr. No say that he was planning to run a shift later in the evening, which now would imply that you do have people there after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm not sure what happens at the other building on the other side of you, but I guess that's one of the things I'm concerned about is what happens after that 3:30 time period and how many people are actually there.
Sure.
And how many trucks are actually coming through there at that time.
For the other businesses.
Yeah, from the other businesses. I would imagine that, I can't tell from my perspective how long the big trucks are coming in and out of there. I'm pretty sure you get a FedEx and UPS at 5 or 5:30 in the evening. That's not unusual. I do have concerns about that part of the day, and I'm not sure that if these other people are running longer shifts, how that's necessarily going to work with your situation. So we need to think about that.
Okay.
All right, so the comment I have is kind of a follow-up. We don't need the applicant back up. It's okay. But I didn't see, we've had several references to the wildfire gymnastics and that, fairly recent approval. And one of the first things I thought when I looked at, because like I said, I'm in and out of this business plaza semi-regularly with catering. And so that was one of my concerns. And I've heard it addressed from the applicant that they keep everybody inside, that they go straight from the car to the building, et cetera, as well as from two parents. That being said, I still would like to you guys, my colleagues up here, I would like to see a similar condition of approval to what we had with wildfire, which actually required that they be inside, that they not be hanging out and playing in the parking lots. It sounds like it wouldn't be a concern, I'm guessing, to the applicant to have that requirement, since it doesn't seem to be happening anyway, but it might put some other concerns, some valid concerns to rest for some people if we include that in any approval that might be as a condition of approval. And I don't remember the exact wording, but like I said, it could be referenced from the wildfire application that is on file somewhere. And because that specific location, similarly, there was concerns, Covenant Trucking is directly across. And that's big rigs, and it's big rigs only, and it's all day, every day, 24 hours a day, coming and going. And so, and I spoke to the owner of Wildfire at the grand opening ceremonies for Little League, and he said that that they haven't had any issues, that it's been great. Because with this on the coming agenda, I asked him, and he said no, that it hasn't been a problem. So it's working in that location, and so it's a little different mix of delivery vehicles and large vehicles and whatnot, but I think that a similar type of condition of approval may help. So.
Well, I would agree with your addition of that particular condition, but sorry, Jerry, I would have a opposition to what Commissioner Verplank is suggesting with regards to a sound issue. I think that, I don't know if that's a business association decision. I would imagine that there's all sorts of other manufacturing companies that are in there, and their machines are going, and so why are we, as a planning commission, designating one business a particular ordinance? Because I don't believe that's our business.
I'm also new, so I'm going to stumble through this a little bit. First of all, I find the staff report comprehensive. You've really outlined all the factors that we need to consider. The decisions now is whether it's a good idea or not. Okay. Second, the applicant has been willing and has made concessions. I think the applicant has good intentions, but I don't think the applicant can control behavior, particularly outside our facility. Four, I need to caution us that we may be instituting daily and continuing conflicts in this area. And my conclusion is that this proposal is not a good fit. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah. When I took a look at this, I thought, wow, that building's right in the middle. If it was out on the far end where address 30 is, I would probably feel a little more comfortable in terms of the overall location. So I took the opportunity to drive through about 5 o'clock tonight to see what it looked like at a time where the maximum activity starts to ramp up, according to the data that's been supplied to us. And what I found was I found people hurrying to get out so they could go home. I found that better than 50% of the parking spaces were vacant as I drove through. And so I don't see from the time here that parking is going to be a problem at the peak time that the operations are proposed here. I do have a sensitivity, though, about whether or not the time from, say, 3:30 in the afternoon until 5, might that look like? And, I didn't take from 3:30 to 5 to go and sit and watch to see what that looks like. Typically, FedEx and UPS are going to have maybe each of them might have 2 trucks in that complex a day. They would prefer to have 1, but it's possible that they would have 2. But the other operations of business, I'm clueless. I don't know what they're going to be doing with drop-offs, deliveries, pickups for shipping, and the like in terms of that. I don't think that this complex was originally designed for this type of an activity. I know others have been retrofitted in the community and worked out very, very well. I do have some reservations about this. I like the business. I like what's being done at the business. If this doesn't prove out to be something that gets approved, I would hope that we would have this business relocate into a more viable place within the city with regard to that. I value that we've had a number of people come and talk to us about the carpooling aspects, and to have that. I agree with Commissioner De Almeida that we don't control behavior. We can't control, nor can the business operator control behavior in terms of where the kids are going to be inside or outside. You can put the rules in, you can monitor it, but there's going to be situations. I'm not overly concerned that even if that were the case, that we would have a high incidence of risk. But it's not our place to evaluate risk here, I think. I think we have to have some judgment to it, but, risk management, it belongs to insurance companies. So those are my thoughts. I'm kind of stuck right in the middle of this one. I don't know what was going to be the best deal, so I'd like to hear the rest of what the Commission has to say.
Well, I think we heard from parents tonight, and I don't think parents are clueless. I know that I'm a parent. I've taken my kids to a lot of different events, and I wouldn't take them to a business that would put my kids in harm's way. I would go to another business. I think we have a businesswoman here who has come and she's done her homework and she's figured out how to take this particular building and make it work for her. Now, she may very well not succeed in this, but who am I? I'm not a dancer. I'm not a businesswoman that wants to look at kids all afternoon, but she is. And I think we have to respect the fact that she's taking a risk, and she wants to take a building in Lake Forest and make a go of it. Our attorney's telling us that we're within the law. Our staff report has said that it works for them. As far as controlling behavior, we can't control that Dennis's employees at 4 or 5 o'clock are going to all of a sudden get 3 Frisbees out and start throwing Frisbees around. So do we need to go and start controlling all the other businesses and their behavior? No, and I think more so in this particular case, you've got parents that are there controlling the behavior in addition to a businesswoman who wants to succeed and wants to have a business in Lake Forest. And who are we to say, if we crossed our I's and dotted our T's and said it works here, it works here, it works here, to say no, because we don't know if Johnny is going to, or Sally, I guess in this case, is going to one day wander out. Well, there are other employees that can do crazy things too, but that's not what we're here to decide upon, I don't think. We're not here to decide upon behavior of people. We're not here to decide who's clueless, who's not clueless. We have a businesswoman who's come to us and said, I can make it work. And I trust her. And I wish her well if she gets this business going. And I hope, it's kind of like my neighbors. I had neighbors moving in, and they had kids and dogs, and I didn't want that next to me. It's a very kind of little tight cul-de-sac. But 3 years later, they're the best neighbors, and I love them, and they've turned out to be really, really fine people. I would have been the big loser if I hadn't given them the opportunity. Could have bought the lot, I guess, and controlled everybody that lives around me, but we can't do that unless we're, very, very wealthy. And so in this condominium-owned, people buy, they come in, and they commerce. And that's what this is all about.
Okay. Does anybody else want to go wrap up? Okay.
I appreciate the work that the staff did on this project. I think you did a really good job. I think you were very thorough. I think your conclusions are accurate and correct. I'm sorry that their condominium association doesn't agree with you. But, I think on the other hand that I have to agree with Vice Chairman Fuentes that I think this lady deserves the opportunity to run her business. I also believe that the condominium association also has the right to enforce the parking as their rules allow. I presume that they're going to do that. And I think it becomes their responsibility if there's a real problem with parking to deal with it. Being on the board of a homeowners association with 3,400 homes, I'm quite familiar with parking issues and this type of thing, so it's not new to me. I believe that, I suspect if there's a spirit of cooperation here, that probably things will work out. And I realize there's a lot of, fear of the unknown, because you don't know quite what's going to happen here, but you just sold a building at number 10. You don't know what's going to happen there either. and they might do something that's more obnoxious than you perceive might be happening with the dance studio. So in that sense, I don't see any particular reason to deny this application. I mean, I am concerned about the parking. I'm concerned about the situation with parents that sit out there and double park. I think that the parents sit out there and double park, somebody ought to run them off. I also live in a neighborhood where twice a day there's an elementary school right next to me, and people double park all the time, and it's real annoying if you're trying to get out of your driveway and there's two people parked in front of it. So I agree with that. I think that's not a good idea either. And I think to the extent that you can prevent that, I think you ought to do it. And I think you ought to make it real plain to the parents if they do that, that there's a penalty for that. But I think all in all, I think it's a good business. I think it will fit the space nicely. I think you've allocated the space properly. We can argue all day about how many parking places you're entitled to, but the truth is, at the end of the day, everybody's sharing parking places, and you'll just need to have to make an agreement with your neighbors to work it out. And if you can do that, I think you'll do fine. And I think that's what you ought to do. At this point, I have no objection to approving it.
I think the only thing that I would add at this point is that I can't agree more with Vice Chair Fuentes that it's really not our place as a government body to tell people what's a good idea and what's a good idea for business. We set parameters of the structural things that need to be in place and the safety regulations that need to be there, and then we need to get out of the way and say go and do what you do. And there's a condominium association there in place for a reason, and it sounds like it's an active association, and an active association is a good thing. And so, if this business goes forward in this location and doesn't play nice, I don't think the association's going to have any problems, putting them in their place. And if it's becoming a consistent problem for parents dropping off and picking up, they're going to find new studios. So, that's the reality that we live in, and it's the reality that I prefer. So I'm not going to stand in the way of it personally. I'll go ahead and wrap up there and ask if anybody would like to bring a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the staff recommendation as recommended, with closing the public hearing as well, and adding the conditional...
Call order.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we didn't ignore you. We gave you time and brought you back up for question and
And you're
answers.
ignoring the city code.
Okay. We gave you more than the 3 minutes. and brought you back up.
9.168.70, dance studios, one for each 150 square foot of gross floor
Miss-
space.
Mr. Chair, you have the,
Miss-
it's your discretion. It's
Yeah.
your meeting. You can
Yeah.
ask people to sit down.
Okay, it's,
I'll continue my motion with the condition of... What was our condition? Children stay inside. You'll figure out the wording on that, right, Jennifer?
I'll second it on the premise also, in addition to the children staying inside, that the parents do not double park or do anything to obstruct the parking.
it would be a friendly amendment.
Friendly
It would need to be
amendment,
approved by the motion.
Well, we hadn't discussed that at all. It wasn't a part of my motion. And I think that there's parking regulations within the association that would probably regulate that, as opposed to us regulating one business amongst the whole. And so I'm not going to agree to that. If you want to do something different, Tom, sorry.
I'll retract it.
Okay, so we still have a motion with no second at the moment.
I'll second it.
I believe he seconded the motion.
I did second it. I just retracted the friendly amendment.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't a provisional second.
No, it's not. It's not a provisional second.
Thank you. Okay, is there any additional discussion? All right, let's vote. The motion carries 4-1. that brings us to director's comments.
Thank you. I just have a few comments this evening. You've all met Christine Talley, so welcome to her. She will be with the commission for several months. And I believe Peggy sent out a notice that there will be a joint meeting of the commissions and the city council to look at the 5-year strategic business plan. And you have the date on that. I believe it's the 31st of March. That's all.
And our city attorney?
Only that I'm happy to be here serving the Planning Commission, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Anybody particular want to go first?
Well, since I'm on the far left now, welcome, Christina. Jennifer, great to see you back. Congratulations. Thank you for a great job tonight. And no further comments.
Welcome, Christina, and congratulations to Commissioner De Almeida for surviving surgery and then showing up tonight. And Jennifer, your baby's beautiful.
Welcome to Christina. We're glad to have you with us and have you on board. And Jennifer, it's really good to have you back, and glad you have a nice, healthy baby, and things are going well at your house. And congratulations to you. And Robert, we're just really glad that you're here. Those are kind of scary things. I had an event like that about 5 years ago. It was a real eye-opener. Changed my life for the good, actually. But welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have some ideas, and because I'm new, I don't know what the protocol should be or how it should be handled. But we do have this joint session coming up with the council and the Parks Commission. And it occurred to me that in the next 10 years, our city is going to be confronted with fiscal forces and market trends that will influence the future growth of our city, and that we need to discuss those options to see what might be the best choices for us in the future. I'd like to present some thoughts to the fellow commissioners. I'm prepared to write something up and just submit it. I don't know if it's something I do as a citizen or something that I just share with the commissioners to give them an idea of what maybe we should be looking at as we look at the future in the 2-year, 5-year, and 10-year horizon for the city. And I wouldn't be offended if you said no thanks.
No, there's no reason why you can't share information with your colleagues, but we have to be mindful of the Brown Act, and so there can't be discussion regarding those items outside of a public meeting among a majority of the Planning Commission. So with that in mind, there's no reason why you can't
So
share
if I choose to do that, and I could bring it back to the next Planning Commission?
Well, right, then you'd need to put something on then you'd have to follow the city's practices with respect to putting matters on the agenda for discussion and possible action. But that's an issue that's separate from just sharing information.
All right, thank you.
I guess that gets it to me. I would like to welcome Christine. I would like to, I don't know, I'm not even sure the right words. I'm amazed that the man sitting next to me is sitting next to me. I'm proud of you for slogging through, given your current medical condition. That's a serious level of dedication.
Thank you.
So, I would like to say thank you to the applicant this evening and to all those who oppose the applicant this evening. I know that I personally value the input, the pros and the cons, and I know that my colleagues, having worked with them for some time now, are of the same mindset. Congratulations on your approval, and we look forward to things moving forward. And I have a five-year-old. She would kill me. I have an 8-year-old daughter who thankfully has not yet asked me to do dance classes. there may be a time someday, but right now she's locked in ice skating, and that's expensive enough. So with that, I will